Pascal Menore. I'm the René and Vanessa Brown Professor of Modern Middle East Studies. I rarely say it in full, and it's a mouthful. I'm really glad to see you all, and welcome to Sultan Al Qassemi's talk this afternoon. I'm going to say a few words about Sultan that I met for the first time a few years ago when I was teaching in Abu Dhabi. Sultan is a writer, an art collector, and an art connoisseur, and an art lover. He currently teaches at Boston College after having taught and conducted research at Yale, Georgetown, NYU, the Working Center, and MIT, right? And Sultan founded and is running the Barjeel Art Foundation, which is based off of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates, and is a wonderful, absolutely marvelous place that collects, curates, keeps Arab, modern, and contemporary art. And the Barjeel Foundation has an exhibition that is currently in the United States that is going to open in New York City, and that is going to be here in Boston, at Boston College, in a year from now, right? And so join me in welcoming Sultan Qassemi.
How much time do I have? Just like
time myself. 35 minutes.
35 minutes. Okay, great. Okay, I want to time myself. Okay, so we're going to start. Can you guys hear me? Great. So I almost call this talk In Search for the Middle Eastern Guernica. Do you guys know what the Guernica is? Okay, we're going to talk about it in a minute. Okay, so again, this lecture is titled Politics of Middle Eastern Art. So we look at the area that includes the Arab world, but also Iran, Israel, Turkey, is amongst my own interest. Here, we're going to begin with the formation of a national identity in a state of Israel. State of Israel, which came into existence in 1948. Before the state of Israel came into existence, the Jews never had a political entity, right? They had their individual identities that were tied to other nations, whether it was Poland or Germany or even North America, and mostly the Middle East, we should never forget. But by 1948, there was the beginning of a sort of a national identity that was started to be formed by yet to become Israelis. So especially in 1947, 48, before May, you see the emergence of certain themes and certain trends by artists who have migrated into a mandate Palestine, right? So one of them was Moshe Bernstein, an artist who was born in Poland, became an Israeli, obviously, in the 1940s. The themes that he covers are camaraderie, for example, friendship, sort of, yes, military endeavors, but you see there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of, there's this military aspect to the painting. Again, the Israelis were presenting themselves as conquerors. These are artists, you should keep in mind, these are individuals who probably didn't speak the same language. So some of them were German, some of them were Polish, some of them were maybe British. They came from all over the world. They didn't speak the same language, but they had to form some kind of cohesive friendship and network within days or weeks or months at the latest. But I also invite you to take a look at the different styles of these works. This one, for example, again, landscape with figurative in front. If you compare it to this work by a German-born Johann Simon, you will see it completely different. I usually invite the audience to analyze this work, but because I have 35 minutes, which is too little, I would say that I will maybe speak and tell you that this work, again, is a celebration of the Sabbath. You will see that even though this artist was born in Berlin, he had a lot of Soviet socialist influence in his work. You see celebration, you see I think that's a mother maybe carrying, or a father carrying a child. You see, this looks like it's dawn, like the break of dawn and the beginning of the day. It has a celebratory aspect to it. But the style is almost completely different than the one we just saw. And this is just before 1948. And compare this work, for example, to this. This one, unfortunately, with a lot of problems in the Middle East, a lot of the collectors refuse to allow us to photograph their work, and so we have to rely on black and white and poor images when we talk about this work. I understand from someone who has seen this work that it's mostly in white and blue, and you can imagine why that is significant. What year is this work? 1948. One thing I would say is, can you see the difference between I mean, I just have to spend 1 minute on this work. Look at this work, it's almost split in half. You see individuals who are coming from the right, of which flowers are emerging from underneath them, while individuals coming from the left, and you can imagine this is the enemy, where there are skulls at the bottom of their feet. So you have good versus evil, at least according to this German-born artist who had just moved to Israel. But amongst the most important works is this by Romanian artist Marcel Yanco, who, I mean, you can see he lived forever, right? He's seen everything, this guy. But what he's done really is an attempt, and he says this in his interviews, an attempt to create an Israeli Guernica. And what is the Guernica? Anybody knows what the Guernica is? Can anyone care to tell us? Yes, sir.
It's Pablo Picasso's masterpiece about the bombing of Guernica by the fascist forces in the Spanish War.
Well done, A. What's your name?
Zach.
Zach, well done, Zach. Okay, so there was this very famous painting by Pablo Picasso when the Luftwaffe came, was invited by Franco to bomb people that Franco didn't really like so much. And so here you see similar themes, right? There's a lot of Guernica in this work. So first of all, you have this cubist element. Second, you have, so this is an Israeli soldier who had just died, and I actually never know if it's a male or female, because as you see, this work actually shows both genders, male and female. You see them mourning, really crying over the death of this individual soldier who had just died. There is this strange, I don't know, what do you think this is, like a light that's emanating from the sky? What could this be? What do you think? Huh?
UFO.
Oh, UFO, yes, maybe. But Rockwell hadn't happened yet. But Roswell, sorry. But what is this? Do you think?
About the opening to heaven and the spirit.
It's like opening to heaven, right? Like a connection to heaven. And what do you reckon this wall is in the back? What is that wall in the back? Yes, sir.
It must be like the Wailing Wall, right?
The Wailing Wall, or East Jerusalem, right? So it's the wall of East Jerusalem, which I assume I've never been, but I assume they're nearby. And so here they're sort of they're in a way mourning not only the loss of this soldier, but also the death of this individual, male or female, at the gates of East Jerusalem, that she's so close, or they were so close to achieving that victory that they had. So again, what happened in Israel was in 1940s. The Israelis, as you saw, came from Poland, from Germany, from UK, and they hadn't yet formed a common national identity when it comes to art. In fact, it would be another 30 years before the Israelis had a national art. It took them that long, about 25 to 30 years, only because so many different people came from all over the world who hadn't studied together. On the other hand, what happened with the Palestinians in the same era? So the Israelis, as you saw, are showing camaraderie. They're showing friendship. They're showing military conquest. They're showing celebration in the kibbutz. What are the Palestinians depicting in the late 1940s and early 1950s? Very different. Very different. They're showing displacement. They're showing refugees. They are showing hunger. They're showing poverty. They're showing people who have been kicked out of their homes. Or they're showing people who, by the way, always read the titles of the works, because that helps you a lot. Where to here signifies the despair of not knowing where you're going. So the Palestinians are saying, where are we going? To where to? We left our homes, it's the only place we ever knew, and now we're expected to go and set up homes elsewhere. We don't know where to go. And as you see, this is probably a man in his 40s or 50s carrying his child who clearly is malnutrition. And so the themes are very different. You notice that the child that's been carried by the Israelis is sort of a healthy child, but the child is being carried by the Palestinians is poor, but also famished and malnutrition, like suffering. Again, themes of displacement by Ismail Shammoud, who, by the way, did a lot of posters for the PLO in the 1960s and 70s. The theme continues. Again, many of them are based on real-life incidents in which he was also part of this caravan of people who had moved within the Levant, at least, and Egypt as well. Ghassan Kanafani, a very famous poet, created this, also writer, huge figure in the Arab world, created this work that basically titled The Displaced, right? So The Displaced, or Al-Mazah in Arabic, showcases this individual who's sort of an older person reminiscing, trying to remember his old home and how it looked like in Palestine before he had left. Okay? Most famous work in the Arab world, maybe the only work that if you go with Thomas Friedman in one of his famous taxi rides across the Middle East, he would, like, this is, the taxi drivers would recognize this painting. So they would say, yes, Thomas, we know this painting. It's by Sleiman Mansour. It's called Camel of Burdens, and it showcases, even though it was done in the 70s, it very much carries forward the theme of carrying Palestine and Jerusalem on your back as a burden, as something that is a responsibility towards your society and your community. But solidarity with the Palestinians extended beyond just Palestine. You see artists like Naim Ismail of Syria creating a work called the Fidayin. What's the Fidayin, by the way? What's Fidayin? Fidayin, what is that word? Fidai. Does anybody know Fidai?
Sacrifice.
Yeah, like the person, like the freedom fighter, Fidai. So the Fidayins were these individuals who, you can come in, you want to come in? Join us. Okay, so these Fidayins are the freedom fighters who were everywhere in the 60s and 70s. Yasser Arafat was a freedom fighter, obviously. Another work here by another Syrian, Abdurrahman Shamma, showing you Palestinian refugees, 1967. I mean, I'm not going to go into it. Some of them really bordered on the anti-Semitic, only because they didn't know how to differentiate or distinguish between, Israel, Judaism. So all these new concepts and themes. This is a work that was created by Samir Rafa, but as you see, it's showing you, the individuals with the Star of David, sort of putting their guns up towards a group of what seems to be civilians. So this work just sold at auction, and it created a lot of trouble. Am I not on video here, so I can tell you what happened? So Christy,
I'm sorry, you are.
I'm on video.
But not live.
Not live.
It's private.
Not
Right,
live.
it's not
Okay.
live.
So the auction house had a lot of problems selling this work because they said, well, this work clearly raises issues that we'd rather avoid. So you could just imagine, even half a century later, these works are quite problematic for the sellers, okay? Emiratis, can you imagine? Emiratis, UAE people being engaged politically with the greater cause of the Arab world, of Palestine, for example. This work by Abdul Qadir is, can you make out there's an Israeli soldier in the back there walking? So barely, if you see it in high res, you could make him out. Okay, so this is a work by Abdul Qadir Rayis from the UAE. But the theme of the Middle Eastern Guernica keeps coming back. The Israelis try to create a Guernica. Now the Arabs are trying to create a Guernica. This work is very much based on the theme, or on the an infamous, notorious incident that took place in 1982. Do I have my dates right? 82, 83. No, it was 82, when a group of South Lebanon Army, SLA, entered into a refugee camp known as Sabra and Shatila, and caused the death of maybe 2,000 people plus, right? And so Ziya Azzawi is an Iraqi artist who was studying, I believe, in Liverpool in these days. There was no TV, there was no social media for the youngsters, they didn't have any Snapchat or Instagram, and so they didn't have visuals. In fact, it was only a French journalist called Jean Genet who wrote about it in the weeks and months that followed. And so all they knew about it, the artists, they knew there was a massacre that was committed, and they were listening to the radio. And on the radio, they heard civilians were killed. They're listening to first-hand accounts. We saw mangled bodies. We saw we saw corpses. We saw furniture that was turned upside down. There was a massacre that took place here. And this work is trying to capture this monumental event of the massacre of Sabra and Shatila, now owned by the Tate Britain. They bought it for $1.4 million from the Iraqi artist. So this is the most expensive work by a Middle Eastern artist sold to a Western institution. Remember the caveats. It's not the most expensive work in auction. It's not the most expensive work ever sold, by the most expensive work that a Western institution bought by a Middle Eastern artist, the Sabra and Shatila of Ziya Azzawi. I mean, look at these work. It's quite a powerful work. Massive painting, I think measuring 6 or 7 meters long. And look at that, the bomb that says USA on it. There's clearly a link that has occurred in the minds of Middle Easterners between any sort of any Israeli-backed sort of incident or massacre that took place in the Arab world. They link it immediately to the Americans. Solidarity with the Palestinians extended beyond the Arab world. In fact, a lot of it came from Iran. Iran, in 1979, a very important year in Iran. In 79, they had the Islamic Revolution. But even before the Islamic Revolution, the Iranians were using posters, which were the easiest way to disseminate information. This work, for example, is Solidarity with Fatah. But another work by the Iranians is Solidarity with the Palestinian Revolution. This work took place during the Iraq-Iran war. Can you imagine that even during the war, the Iranians were standing in solidarity with the Palestinians? So the history of Iran is much more complex than what some people try to associate with today. But maybe the most interesting painting that was created in solidarity with the Palestinians was created by none other than an Israeli. So an Israeli artist who was born in Germany, Naftali Bezem, who's still alive, Masha Allah. He must be in what? He must be 96 years old now. He created this work, which is now on display for the first time in decades in Israel, in which he says that I created this work in response to the 1956 massacre of Kafr Qasim, in which about 3 or 4 dozen Palestinians were killed. So imagine an Israeli creating a work in solidarity with Palestinian civilians saying, I don't agree with what happened. So this is something that you have to keep in mind, that even Israelis had objected to policies that were taking place, artistically at least, objected to some of these policies. This is the peak of solidarity with Palestine. 1978, in the midst of the Lebanese civil war, a group of Arab artists invited 200 artists from around the world to donate paintings. I mean, they had Joan Miro, they had Anthony Tapie, they had some of the greatest artists alive of the 1970s donating 1 or 2 works each. They donated the works in 1978. The work stayed in storage in 1982. An incident took place in which some foreign country invaded Beirut and went for the PLO headquarters, and many of these works have been lost and or destroyed. So about 200 masterpieces of modern art gone. We have no idea where we are. One can almost just hope and pray that the Israelis told them at least they haven't been destroyed. Now, this is an image of the opening of the exhibition that only lasted for a month and a half. Very, very important, a book that was just published. Other than Palestine, what are the other themes? You say, what are the themes that when the Middle Eastern artists stand in solidarity with each other? Yes, there was more than just Palestine. The issue of Algeria. Now, Algeria went through 8 or 9 year war to try and get rid of the French presence in North Africa. And this is really one of the nicest and most powerful paintings created by an Amazigh, a Berber, an Amazigh artist in 1961 or 65, made this work called The Martyrs, that a French collector just donated last year back to Algeria. So thank you very much, whoever that French collector is, who gave the work back to Algeria, which I believe is the right thing to do. This work clearly, again, inspired by the Guernica, showing you the martyrs of the Algerian War of Independence against France. I mean, I'm not really interested in abstraction, but look how powerful this work is. Why is this work interesting? What is this weird painting doing in a talk about politics in the Middle East? Doesn't make sense. But why it makes sense is that there was a battle called the Huggar battle, in which the younger brother of the artist had died. And so his way of creating an homage to his brother is creating this desert landscape in which his brother died and making it and devoiding it of human presence. And there's no one there in this desert. And so that is really such a powerful, powerful painting called the Huggar. But look at this work. This is a Lebanese artist. So we see the Algerians creating art about the war, but we also are going to meet a number of Middle Eastern artists creating works about the Algerian war, including this one by Lebanese artist Arif al-Rais. It's so powerful. I mean, just take a minute to look at it. You have, usually I give people the chance to talk here, but you have a group of individuals here that look like they're not really having a great time, okay? And then there's a group of, this looks like crocodiles or alligators or some kind of monster that's sewing into their limbs and making it, what do you call this? Some kind of...
Bucket?
Huh?
A bucket of blood?
Bucket of blood that looks like a porridge or what is it, a stew? A stew, right? They do some kind of stew with bones, and it says OAS and Europe, and there's the Nazi emblem, and then there's the Magan David, and so again, very politically charged work donated by the artist to Algeria as an homage to them. And by the way, no one has an image of this work. I took this photograph of this painting when I was in Algeria. I had to dangle over the staircase. I almost fell off. The family doesn't have an image. So you can imagine this is the problem we have when we study art from the Middle East, including Turkey, including Iran. There are no images. How do you study works? How do you study art when there are no images? The best we can do is black and white, or sometimes some color paintings. Okay. Mahmoud Sabri, I mean, just check this work out. It's incredible. Mahmoud Sabri, who studied in Russia, created this work again as an homage to the Algeria. So Algeria, whether the artist was from Lebanon or from Iraq or from Syria, was a major theme amongst the Iraqis. Again, a Moroccan guy who said that this is an homage to Algeria. I'm trying to like abstract art. I'm really trying. And so this is a work of abstraction by a Moroccan artist who said that for my brothers from Algeria, I created the work based on the color, the ochre of the soil of Algeria. That is what I'm trying to capture. The soil, the sand, the brown sand mixed with the red blood came up with this ochre color. That's what he's trying to do here. I'm trying my best. Okay? Now, Tunisian artists, once again, created works. I'm going to skip through this. Another work by Tunisian, born in Indonesia, Indonesian mom, Hatem al-Makki. Fascinating artist. Again, creating works in solidarity to Algeria was a major theme. This is the bombing of Saqif Sidi Youssef, which was a border between, it's a border town between Algeria and Tunisia, and the Algerian freedom fighters fled there, and the French were like, screw it, go there and bomb them. So they sent them planes, and they bombed them in Tunis. So this is the first time that the French had bombed in Tunis by using planes, and a major incident in Middle East and North African history. So again, Algeria, I'm just showing you examples of works that were created in solidarity with Algeria, but what are the non-Middle Eastern causes? We saw Palestine, we saw Algeria, but did Middle Eastern artists ever stand in solidarity or with other causes, or are we just so selfish that we only care about the Middle East? This is what happened. We have a number of artists, including Ibrahim al-Salahi, who celebrated his 90th birthday, I think this month. Ibrahim al-Salahi, Sudanese artist, here creating a work as an homage to Patrice Lumumba. You guys know who Patrice Lumumba is? If you don't, go and Google him. He is more important than Trump. He was more important than any other person. It's a shame that we don't know the name of this individual, the first democratically elected leader. I won't go into who killed him, but you guys can guess. He was murdered after 81 days in office, and so this was a major theme that African artists created, including this one by Sudanese Ibrahim al-Salahi. Beautiful work by Bahman Muhassis from Iran, really one of the greatest artists of the Middle East and North Africa, created this work as an homage to Martin Luther King, and we celebrated his birthday a couple of days ago. So Martin Luther King, an Iranian artist, making a work about an African American freedom leader, right? So imagine how many layers of world history have intersected just in this painting. And by the way, this is based on a very famous picture of Martin Luther King with, I think, one of his friends is kneeling over his body. So this is really an abstraction of that image by Iran's Bahman Muhassis. This painting sold for $550,000 for free. It was basically given for free. For me, I would add a zero to that price. It's a masterpiece, but this is how cheap Middle Eastern art is. We need to make it more appreciated.
Who bought it?
Auction, I don't know. We have to go and find them. Okay? So here you have a Palestinian artist creating a work that looks like a shape of a bomb, like an explosion. But look at the countries that he has linked together. Kamal Bulata, who passed away just last summer. Vietnam, Palestine, Rhodesia, which is Zimbabwe, right? and South Africa. So he's put them all together. He's gone from Asia to the Middle East to Africa, showing that there is a solidarity, a common theme between all these countries' struggles. Vietnam, Palestine, once again, keeps coming up. Okay, won't talk about this because I have no time, but I will talk about this artist who is Inji Aflatun. What a story. Inji Aflatun, one of my favorites. You have to remember this name. Forget everything I say. Remember Inji Aflatun. Inji Aflatun was this artist who was born into a French-speaking family. Her mother was a designer of haute couture, some kind of like Cartier or I don't know what, Dior fashion house. They spoke French. She played the piano. They're very wealthy. And then one day, her mother traveled on her own on a plane in the 1930s from Cairo to Paris to buy clothes. Blah blah blah. But one day, these princesses come to visit her mother's house to say, we're here to buy clothes for the winter collection or something, okay? So they go to buy some clothes, they bring their uncle with them. Who's their uncle? None other than the artist Mahmoud Mukhtar. Mahmoud Mukhtar walks in and he goes, oh, I like your daughter, she dabbles in art. She's not bad, by the way. She goes, yeah, I'm looking for an artist for her. My daughter's quite good. This is Inji Aflatun's mom, okay? He goes, I have an artist for you. Who? Well, I have this guy. Who's this guy? His name's Camel Tilmisani. Okay, sure. Well, Camel Tilmisani is a great artist. Yeah, he's fantastic. Trouble is, Camel Tilmisani is a communist, or was a communist. So he goes to young Inji, and he says, hey Inji, by the way, you know why you're sitting here and you're painting in your mom's house and everybody's talking about fashion and French and all that. You know that Egypt is very, very poor. People have no rights. People are really suffering and there's no income. And she goes, really? She had no idea. And then she became so radicalized. She left school. She joined the Communist Party. She founded a branch for women in the Communist Party. She became a Marxist. She was protesting non-stop. She even represented Egypt. Where? She represented Egypt in the Paris Conference of 1945. Can you imagine? She issued a manifesto, said 80 million women stand with us. We are demanding women's rights. What a rock star, huh? So this woman creates a work in 1948 when she's a teenager. And they tell her, like one of the critics goes to her and say, young lady, how can so much darkness come from a girl like you who grew up in that household? And she goes, she connects with people. Okay, so that's her. But she also tried to document past injustices against Egyptians. So not only current ongoing injustices, but past injustices, like the massacre of Din Shaway. What happened then? A group of Egyptians were executed by the British. Can you guys see the British helmets here? You see here? Look, the British overlooking the massacre of Din Shaway. And she's like, we'll never forget it, you Brits. We'll never forget it. We're going to paint about it. We're going to talk about it. We'll remind you about what you guys did. So Inji Aflatun ended up where? Abdel Nasser daughter, Ya Binti. Halas, Ya Binti. Enough protesting. No, I'm protesting. The king is gone. There's no more king. I'm still protesting. What do you want? I want Marxism. What do you want? I want equal rights, equal pay for women. He got so fed up with her, he threw her in jail for 4.5 years. In jail, she convinced the warden to let her paint. She's like, listen, I'm an important artist. I need income. I want to paint. And so finally, she published a book, by the way. Finally, he let her paint as long as they sent her art, as long as the art was small, blah, blah, blah. These are some of the surviving paintings. Unfortunately, very few survived. That's one of them. That's another one of them, the dormitory of the political prisoners. This is another one, The Dreams of a Detainee, 1961. Incredible! This is the first time that we have a written and visual record of not just a woman, but anyone in jail in the Middle East in the mid-20th century. Very important documentation. Continues with the theme of the Fidayeen. The Fidayeen keeps coming up, as you can see. Okay? Thank you, Inji. I mean, look how gorgeous she is. Stunning. Stunning, stunning. Okay? And this is her visiting Paris with other artists. Only one of them still alive. Talk about it later. Another artist that I really like, okay, is Kazem Haidar. So Kazem Haidar, very interesting guy. Iraqi artist, stood at the nexus of intelligentsia and intellectualism in Iraq. He was a poet, he was a writer, he was a journalist, he was an artist, he was a playwright, he did the sets for the theater. Incredible. But he was also a political activist. So one of the things he did, Kazem Haidar, was he invited a group of individuals in the 1950s and told them, tell me what you saw. what happened in Iraq in 1956? There was an uprising in which, let me get the name right, Aslam Saeed, Nouri Pasha Saeed, right?
Yep.
So Nouri Pasha Saeed, the prime minister of Iraq, was fed up with the protesters, and he orders the tanks into the streets. And he says, go and get rid of this protest for me. We don't want to see any more protesters. So Kazem Haidar invites one of the protesters and says, tell me what happened, young man. What did you see? And he goes, I saw a lot of darkness. I saw bad things. Bad things happened in front of me. He goes, tell me. And he painted him here. And you know, Kazem Haidar is also the master of hidden messages. He's done a number of works where the messages is hidden in the artwork, including this one. Okay, take a look at this. You're going to think, what is Sultan going on about? It's just a guy who's sitting down on the floor. It's not a big deal. Why is Sultan going on about this work? It's because the hidden messages are all here on the left. I'm going to zoom in now. You guys ready? Okay, I'm zooming in to the left, huh? Look at this. What did you see, young man? I saw a group of women being shot at by a soldier. What else did you see, young man? I saw these people pleading for their lives, asking people to stop shooting at them, but they continued. What else did you see? I saw a man rape a woman. I saw all this in front of me. And all that is recorded in this document of 1957 that recorded Iraq's the darkest nights of Iraq. What happened in the same period? You had the monarchy that was toppled and killed. Fakhr al-Nisa Zayd, unfortunately I can't go into her too much, but she's a Turk who lived in Iraq. And here she's captured in her abstract painting the bullet that she sees had killed the Iraqi king. So this is her way of capturing that moment in history forever. Although she wasn't a political artist, but she goes, I need to capture that moment. Okay. Ooh, I'm not sure if I have time for this, but did you know that the CIA are the biggest backers of Middle Eastern art? Thank you, CIA. Who would have thought? The CIA is backing Middle Eastern art. I won't go too much into it, but the CIA in their report are talking about how our goal is to promote culture, blah, blah, blah. I won't really go into it, but thank you for promoting and for investing in Jawad Saleem, Iraqi artist, 1951. They did a major exhibition for him. He toured around the US. Can you see here? I think he's gone to Philadelphia here. They funded Salah Taher of Egypt, and they funded Sudanese and Pakistani and Iranian. Thank you so much. What's going on? Definitely rather than fund art than fund some other things that they're funding. Okay? So this is one of the works that was shown in that tour. Who was this person who started that? Who started this weird idea of funding Middle Eastern artists? None other than Kermit Roosevelt. And what's Kermit Roosevelt famous/notorious for? He's the one who removed the first democratically elected leader of the Middle East. It was completely mind-boggling. The Americans, I don't understand them, right? They're like, they want democracy, but there's a democratic president elected, and they remove him. So that's what's happening. That's Mossadegh who was removed. We won't go into it. This work, the Qataris bought for $700,000. Nothing. Nothing. Really nothing. It should be $7 million. Okay? We'll talk about a little bit of the USSR's influence on the Middle East. The USSR, unlike the Americans who brought 10 artists, the USSR brought thousands. In 1980, the peak year of the USSR funding Middle Eastern artists, there were 8,000 Middle Eastern students in the USSR. 8,000! The Americans had 8. So you can imagine the difference of the influence of the USSR versus the Americans, including Mahmoud Sabri, who did the Algeria. Remember the Algeria painting we saw? Same artist, okay? Do you see how his style changed, by the way? Remember the Algeria painting we saw earlier? Right? Look how the style changed after he spent 3 years in the Soviet Union. So art really goes deep into your mind. Again, I won't talk about these works so much. These are examples of how artists were influenced from the Middle East when they went to Russia. They very much look like the Russian paintings, if you think about it. Right? Ooh, my favorite character of the 20th century, Gamal Abdel Nasser. I would spend an entire class on this person. But we'll talk about 2 paintings of Gamal Abdel Nasser. One is by his buddy, close friend, Hamid Ouais, who depicts him here as a larger-than-life character, being surrounded by everyday Egyptians of all types, of all women in hijabs, military figures, religious figures, Everybody is around him celebrating, and Abdel Nasser is looking gorgeous and handsome as usual. There isn't a single bad photo of Abdel Nasser. I challenge anyone here in this room, you have until 2030 to find me one bad photo of Abdel Nasser. Email me and you get a prize. There isn't a single bad photo. So Abdel Nasser is really that handsome, or was, okay? So you see how these people are, their eyes are just, you know, in awe of him. I would be one of those people there. Okay, so even if I don't agree with his politics. But, I mean, just look at that. So this painting, again, showing you all these people around him. And you want to see another one that's even nicer? I wish we bought it. I don't know. You want to see the next one? Look at this work. Wow. Just, I mean, look at that crest smile. You say crest smile here, or you say Colgate smile? Colgate smile, right? Colgate. It's a beautiful, and look at that, okay? So Abdel Nasser here is presented as someone who is giving a talk at the United Nations, but who's sitting in the front row? Someone tell me. Students, priority to students. Yes, both of you, go ahead.
I need, like, everyone who's anyone. Eisenhower, you know, Nehru, Khrushchev, Sukarno, so on.
Who's this guy?
Nehru?
No?
Nkrumah?
Nkrumah. From which country?
Ghana.
Ghana. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think you got more.
Okay, what's Zach, right?
Yes.
What's this middle seat? What's going on in the middle seat?
Uh,
Whose seat is that?
it's empty.
But
Right?
who's it? Why is it Casper? Who's
Is
it?
it his seat?
What does that mean? What does it mean if that's his seat? Yeah, and then where is he going back to?
He's
The
one of
front
the
row.
great men.
He's where is he sitting? In the back? He's in the front, right? Front and center. Like I'm sitting in the middle. I'm sitting in the front row, so everyone's paying attention. I love, this is my favorite piece about this painting. Where's the Saudi guy sitting?
Looks like Professor.
Yeah, where is he sitting? Like, behind him. Behind him to the left. Like back. Sit in the back. And pay attention.
Fidel Castro.
Yeah,
And
but
Fidel Castro, yes. I mean, Castro, like, Cuba's like 3 million people. Okay, so, but anyway, Saudi, so it's his arch nemesis of Saudi Arabia. So it's a beautiful, beautiful painting. Abdel Nasser, even after he died by a decade almost, he's still looming large over the Middle East. Okay, I'm almost done. I really want to stop early, but I mean, these are just such beautiful posters. Look at this work. Which one was made in Iran? Which one was made in Iraq? Students. Okay, someone explain to me one of them. What do you see here? Okay, I'm going to talk because I know I only have, what, how much time do I have? 2-3 minutes? I want to end. So this is a poster by the Iraqis.
Take 5 minutes. more.
5 minutes. Okay, poster by the Iranians showing Saddam Hussein as a poodle. Is that the right word? First of all, you have the Star of David here. Then you have, what else do we have? We have 2, what do you call this? Huh? Leash, yeah. The leash, and the leash has the hammer and sickle of, which country is this? Soviet Union, and which is this? Okay, and he's being punched by who? By the Islamic Republic. See, so that's, for example, a poster. Very interesting. Look at the languages that are written on the poster. So it's Persian and Arabic. Okay? Versus the Iraqis. The Iranians were much better than the Arabs and the Iraqis in posters. Just to make things clear. Okay, this is an Iraqi poster from the same period showing you who? Ayatollah, and written in which language? Arabic, which doesn't really make so much sense. Okay? Especially if you want to do propaganda on the other side, you have to have the language of the other side. Now, so this was official. These are the non-official. So Iraqi and Iranian artists also depicted women fighters, women wives of martyrs. All of them were depicted by women, by the way, women and men. So this is something that's very, very important, that women artists were very much present. The last work I will end with is this work by Layla Sayed. So Layla Sayed is still alive, Masha Allah. She's, I think, 80 or so. Layla Sayed is living in an old people's home in Syria. Layla Sayed depicted here in 1978, a Syrian artist depicted the death of a Syrian, how do you say, a humanitarian worker in Lebanon in 1978, 3 years after the Lebanese Civil War started, a woman called Mary Rose Bules. Mary Rose Bules was a Syrian humanitarian worker who moved to Lebanon and looked after Palestinian children. but she looked after Palestinian deaf, blind, mute children. She looked after children who had physical disabilities. Okay, can you see these? Look at the children with their eyes closed and their mouths closed. So this is a depiction of the children that were killed. Sorry, the children that were looked after by Mary Rose Bules. Why am I telling the story? Next slide is coming up. Okay, Mary Rose Bules was killed by a militia who told her, stop looking after the Palestinians. We are anti-Palestinian. The Palestinians, we want them out of Lebanon. So she's the one who paid the price for it. And who wrote about this? None other than these are some of the women who were killed in the war. But who wrote about her? Have you heard of Ital Adnan? Ital Adnan is one of the most important artists and authors from the Middle East and North Africa. Are we okay? Yeah, okay. So Ital Adnan wrote this book called Sit Mary Rose. What does sit mean? Sit, lady. So Sit Mary Rose. I just want to read you just one quote of the story. Okay. So, oh, by the way, I found a picture of Mary Rose. It took me like a year to find this image. So what Mary Rose Bules looked like. Okay. So this translation here is because she was with the people, because she was with the future and children and Palestine and Lebanon, she was martyred. But in the story of Sit Mary Rose, the gang, so Ital Adnan is imagining the conversation that the gang is having just before they killed her. And look how she's raised here by women, not men. The men are standing in the back where they belong. You see? Okay, the women are front, the women are carrying the martyr, not the men. And the children, the mute, deaf, blind children are mourning the loss of their adopted mother, the mother who looked after them. And the quote that Ital Adnan comes up with in this book is, we want them, the children, to see what happens to traitors. Sit Mary Rose, they'll have to see with their own eyes what's going to happen to her. They must learn so that later they won't get any ideas about rebellion. You never know. Nowadays, even deaf mutes could become subversive. I'm done. Thank you very much.